The location was my home of Palestine. The year was 1571 during the Ottoman period, and the victim, the nephew of a Joshua bin Nun, an important figure at the time, who was caught in the grip of an entity that would not let go. While such supernatural instances are often attributed to the Djinn, a race of human-like extra-dimensional beings made from fire, this was different. This was a creature that within Kabbalistic traditions is a member of a class of terrifying anomaly known to specifically cling to humans. Before the growing influence of European powers, 16th century Palestine was a flourishing society with a strong infrastructure, economic stability, and most importantly, religious tolerance. This tolerance allowed for Kabbalistic study to flourish within the region, an esoteric form of Jewish mysticism not too different from Sufism that was given safe haven in the Islamic Ottoman Empire at that time. But it is here that the first recorded instance of this terrifying anomaly was documented. The man who conducted the exorcism was Isaac Luria, a prominent Kabbalist. Through this exorcism, he determined that reality does not end at death, but could in fact be just the beginning. Although his ideas remain controversial and theologically problematic, some of those who agree with Luria's ideas via the Kabbalah faith that the entity that attached itself to this boy is evidence of a broader mystery, a terrifying through line that can be traced from 16th century Palestine to modern-day New York. This connects to a wider conspiracy that includes the creation of monsters, the summoning of demons, reincarnation, reanimating of the deceased, but most terrifyingly sex magic, and the activities of groups of powerful people who mistakenly believe that they are tapping into a cosmic horror so vast in scale, it crosses multiple timelines and realities, leaving us with a question: could their twisted interpretation of this belief risk unleashing terrible forces into our modern world?
In October 2014, Dr. Galit Atlas, a psychoanalyst and clinical supervisor in private practice in Manhattan, New York, published a paper detailing her encounter with a man who claimed to be possessed by an entity from ancient Middle Eastern lore. Sitting across from her, Danny, a pseudonym used to protect his anonymity, was a successful, handsome, but lonely economist in his 30s whose life was beginning to unravel under the weight of his affliction. According to Danny, the presence typically manifested during heightened states of arousal. In one session, he described in explicit detail a fantasy about a co-worker, an imagined seduction that led to an intimate encounter. But as he finished recounting the story, he confessed something chilling. "It's not me talking," he said. "It's him, the Dybbuk." In Jewish folklore, a Dybbuk is a spirit not unlike a Djinn, an entity that roams homeless, seeking to possess a living host, often refusing to let go. Jewish mythology frequently links ghosts and spirits to sin and with the ancient Mesopotamian entity Lilith playing a key role in these narratives. While Dr. Atlas ultimately interpreted Danny's affliction as a psychological rather than supernatural as a result of his loneliness, a lingering question remains: what if the entity speaking through him was real and exploiting his loneliness? And if it was real, how does it connect to a broader conspiracy involving supernatural forces that interact with humans through sexuality? Dr. Atlas wrote that Danny believed that the only way to rid himself of the entity was through rituals found in the Kabbalah, an historic tradition within Jewish mysticism that explores the hidden nature of the universe and the spiritual forces shaping reality. These sacred texts have also been linked to a range of fringe phenomena that may hint at a much broader conspiracy, one involving sex magic, secret societies, and even world domination. The Kabbalah has long been associated with historic mysticism, hidden knowledge, and secret traditions, fueling various controversial and fringe theories. From Aleister Crowley to Sean Diddy Combs, many high-profile figures of the 20th and 21st century have been linked to this tradition, either directly or indirectly, often in disturbing ways. While Kabbalah itself is a peaceful, broad, and complex mystical tradition, certain groups and individuals have taken its teachings in cult-like or conspiratorial directions, ranging from bizarre practices to horrors that seem almost Lovecraftian in scale. At the beginning of this episode, we introduced the Dybbuk, a paranormal entity tied to Kabbalistic demonology. While the lore of these beings typically focuses on spiritual possession, individuals and cults familiar with the darker aspects of Kabbalah have expanded their association with summoning demons into far more disturbing territory, as we will see in the next chapter. One of the most famous legends from Kabbalistic tradition is the tale of the Golem, an artificial humanoid being supposedly brought to life through divine knowledge made entirely of clay. The most well-known version of this legend involves Rabbi Judah Louis of Prague, a prominent 16th century scholar and Kabbalist who allegedly created a clay servant. According to tradition, he uses mystical knowledge inspired by the way God created Adam to animate the creature. The word golem comes from Hebrew, meaning incomplete or unfinished, described as a mud figure magically brought to life by its human creator. The most famous golem was named Useli. It was said to possess supernatural abilities, including invisibility and the power to summon spirits from the dead. While versions of the story vary, some modern skeptics dismiss the story as an urban myth, while others believe there could be some truth to it. In the most disturbing accounts, the creature eventually began rampaging through Prague before being subdued. According to legend, the remains of Lowe's golem were stored in the attic of the Old New Synagogue, though renovations in 1883 reportedly found no evidence of its existence. This is just one of several stories involving the creation of golems in Poland and other parts of Eastern Europe, with some accounts dating back to the early 1500s or possibly even earlier. Similar to the surge in Dybbuk possession stories, reports of golem creation appear to have peaked between the 16th and 17th centuries, with additional cases recorded as recently as the 2000s. Researcher John Hartman's 1987 study documented at least 63 Dybbuk possession cases spanning 400 years. This pattern raises an intriguing question. What was happening in Eastern Europe at that time to trigger such a spike in alleged supernatural occurrences? Could the Dybbuks and golems be part of the same phenomena? Two cases from the 21st century suggest so. Today, the classical image of the golem as a living clay figure has largely faded from discussion, with one of the last famous alleged real accounts occurring in 1800 in Belarus, where the entity reportedly burned down the house it was intended to serve. Since then, there have been scattered reports of anomalies matching golem descriptions, manifesting at will in random people's homes worldwide. In 2013, in California, an individual recounted an unusual experience while visiting their cousin's house. The cousin was reportedly suffering from severe sleep paralysis episodes, involving gray-skinned figures with greasy black hair embracing her in her sleep. The witness, who identifies as spiritual, suspected a supernatural attachment, but was discouraged from discussing it. One evening, while the witness and their cousins were talking in the kitchen, all the house lights flickered off and back on for a second. Immediately after the lights returned, the witness felt compelled to look toward their cousin's makeshift bedroom, and saw a 6 feet humanoid figure standing near the curtain. The figure was described as wearing brown clothing from the 1800s, including a top hat with skin that appeared to be made of grey clay. It had human-like features, but its appearance was difficult to define. It evoked an intense emotional reaction, disgust, anger, and fear, despite making no movement or direct interaction before vanishing. A second incident, occurring at an unspecified date and location, involved a man who had lit a candle for meditation. Purchased from an occult store, the subject later perceived a figure standing by his bedroom door, described as a man composed of dripping mud. Initially believing it to be a hallucination, he attempted to ignore the figure until it moved forward, grabbed his ankles, and forcibly pulled him from the bed. The subject reported hitting the floor before regaining awareness in bed. When he informed his roommate, the incident was dismissed as likely sleep paralysis. However, later that night, while attempting to sleep, the subject saw the same figure floating above him, still dripping mud. The entity then physically grabbed his shoulders, at which point he lost consciousness and awoke 12 hours later. Since then, no further incidents have occurred. What both instances have in common is that the entities were humanoid figures matching traditional golem descriptions, but interacted with humans in way more consistent with Dybbuk or demonic encounters. The latter cases, in particular, appeared to have been summoned through a brief ritual of meditation, suggesting that both Dybbuks and Golem may be variations of the same type of entity, perhaps a form of Djinn, but who knows? Historians and theologians believe that the broader context surrounding the creation of these creatures centered on their role in protecting and serving the religious communities their creators belonged to. However, some theories suggest that certain Kabbalistic sects continue to practice forbidden forms of life creation, experimenting in the 21st century with alchemy, genetic manipulation, and astral entities to bring new beings into existence. If these beings are astral entities, their sudden manifestations in the homes of people experiencing intense sleep paralysis could be explained through altered states of consciousness, moments when the mind is the most susceptible to perceiving or even interacting with otherworldly forces projected into their lives by unknown individuals. However, if they are merely the products of scientific experiments involving alchemy and genetic manipulation, this brings us back to the themes of the previous episodes, the convergence of technology with what might be called magic in the creation and summoning of entities that could pose a threat to humanity. Some French theorists argue that modern AI and transhumanism movements are unknowingly or even deliberately following ancient Kabbalistic blueprints for artificial life, merging human consciousness with machines. If true, AI itself could be considered a digital age golem, an artificial servant that once awakened may defy its creators. Even more controversially, some claim that the forces behind AI's rise are not merely corporate titans, but individuals linked to ancient historic traditions, secret societies that see AI not just as a tool, but as a vessel for something beyond human understanding. While this does not implicate all followers of these traditions, it suggests that a select few have twisted their beliefs into something far darker, something known as the Tree of Death, a multiversal threat that challenges the very nature of reality itself. Influential figures, from industry moguls to pop culture icons, may be aware of this, and that takes us back to the golden era of hip-hop in the late 90s and the thriving music scene of New York.
Welcome to New York in the late 1990s, where one of the pivotal figures from this era, Sean Diddy Combs, was beginning to gain global recognition. Beginning his professional career as a background dancer, then graduating to record label intern, and finally peaking as a billionaire mogul in little over a decade, Diddy made powerful connections with business and entertainment elites across the globe in record time. However, as his influence grew, so did the dark rumors surrounding him. Throughout his career, Diddy has been associated with a series of unfortunate events, ranging from a mass casualty incident at a school in the early 90s to controversial group sessions of an intimate nature in the modern day, where some individuals claim they were coerced into participating in. Now, while most of the more recent charges have yet to be proven or disproven in court, a consistency has emerged amongst the more serious allegations. A disturbing connection to a twisted interpretation of the Kabbalah, an interpretation probably made most famous by the 21st century occultist Aleister Crowley. With at least one accuser stating that Diddy's intimate sessions involving 3 or more people would sometimes be lit with candles, not only have netizens and actual participants noted how ritualistic these gatherings seemed, but producers working for Diddy under his Bad Boy label claimed that recording sessions would sometimes also be candlelit, where ritualistic invocations were chanted by those in attendance. One former hip-hop producer who alleges to have encountered literal spiritual entities while working for Diddy said the following.
We would all be in the studio, and it would almost be ritualistic. You know, we would light candles, and as the beats are playing, you know, they would be chanting different things over the music alone.
With allegations of non-consensual group intimacy and the invocation of demons, some might draw parallels to the rituals occult societies like the Ordo Templi Orientis are believed to have practiced a century ago. This raises the speculation that Diddy's rapid rise to fame may have had a supernatural component.
Diddy and his orgies was that energy harvesting, and here's the funny thing. You don't have to believe in summoning demons, the occult, in order for the person doing that crazy stuff to actually do it. So I believe that Diddy would do something like this.
For years, several media outlets have speculated about Diddy's connection to the Kabbalah, though no definitive proof has emerged proving that he is a practitioner. One of the most persistent rumors surrounding him is his alleged link to the Kabbalah Center, a prominent organization that teaches Kabbalistic principles and has been associated with various celebrities over the years. And given what we have already covered so far in this episode, where individuals have used the tools of this belief system to summon extra-dimensional entities, we have a theoretical, albeit tenuous, connection to Diddy and those who would warp the belief system to suit their needs. Beyond the alleged invocation of entities during Diddy's parties, recording sessions, and other gatherings, there exists a broader occult belief that taking a life of another living mammal as part of a ritual can lead to significant wealth. Now, this is not a teaching you can specifically find within traditional Kabbalah as far as we are aware, and you can correct us in the comments if we're wrong. Sacrificial communion with supernatural entities is a common trope in various other religious and esoteric traditions. This brings us to the fascinating and controversial figure of Aleister Crowley, a 20th century occultist who was known for his hedonistic lifestyle, much like the rumors surrounding Sean Diddy Combs. While Diddy's involvement with disturbing occult practices remains speculative, since he has denied any and all wrongdoing, Crowley was not only famous for his overindulgent lifestyle, but also for his deep involvement in occult rituals that pushed boundaries, specifically his system of magic known as Thelema. This system heavily incorporated elements of Kabbalah, particularly when it came to invoking supernatural entities. Crowley's take on Kabbalah wasn't purely academic. He fused Sufism, Mesopotamian and Egyptian beliefs, and pre-Islamic esoteric traditions into his rituals, shaping what he called magic, a practice of channeling energy from these rites to attain spiritual or material goals. Today, skeptical netizens have accused Diddy of engaging in a modern variation of this practice, if not the exact same. Although we're venturing into speculation and may never fully uncover the extent of Diddy's alleged ritualistic activities, what is intriguing are the striking hedonistic similarities between him and Crowley. Both figures, in their quests for power and transcendence, are said to have physically harnessed energy from their intimate encounters with women and men, allegedly using it in attempts to communicate with anomalous forces. In 1904, while in Cairo, Crowley's wife is said to have encountered an entity that identified itself as the Egyptian deity Horus. This manifestation is believed to have occurred as a result of the couple's ongoing ritualistic practices, which they had been engaged in up until that point. According to Crowley's Thelema, Horus symbolizes strength and a new spiritual age. While not directly linked to intimacy, Crowley views this strength as a force for spiritual transformation. He believed that once harnessed, it could be used to achieve one's quote-unquote true will, something that can be accessed via ritualized intimacy. Elements of this idea parallel certain hedonistic aspects of Diddy's own reported lifestyle, with the so-called rapper even tweeting about his days-long tantric sessions. While there is a difference between regular tantric intimacy and that of the Thelema, which seems to be more geared towards the supernatural, both individuals, if the allegations against Diddy are true, seem to believe that the harnessing of the energy generated between two or more individuals who are intimate with each other can lead to material wealth. This theorized cross-section between intimacy and demonology is not the only method for gaining power. As mentioned earlier, blood sacrifices are also seen as a vessel to success. And so with this in mind, some social media users have looked back to the beginning of Diddy's career, wildly speculating that a tragic event hosted by him and the late rapper Heavy D in 1991 was the spiritual push that eventually rocketed him to billionaire status. While blood offerings are a common motif within the three Abrahamic faiths, both figuratively and literally, none of these beliefs and their popular offshoots like Kabbalah theologically support the taking of human life in this manner. In its traditional form, Kabbalah is meant to be a deeply spiritual and mystical branch of Judaism, focused on understanding the nature of God, the universe, and the soul's journey. It's an esoteric discipline that tries to seek divine wisdom, interpreting hidden meanings in the Torah, and exploring concepts like the tree of life. However, over the centuries, fringe groups, mystics, and occultists have extracted and modified Kabbalah teachings and other Middle Eastern traditions for their own purposes. Organizations and individuals like Crowley, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Ordo Templi Orientis, and other esoteric groups blended Kabbalah with alchemy, tarot, astrology, demon summoning, and dark ritual magic. Activities alien to the core tenets of the Abrahamic traditions, removing Kabbalah from its monotheistic roots, giving it a more ominous reputation. Although Diddy has never publicly confirmed any association with Kabbalah or Crowley's practices, despite his close friend, yani business associate Jay-Z, often sporting a sweater quoting Crowley's most famous saying, "Do what thou wilt," the central tenet of Thelema, the media has consistently linked him to Crowley. And on a side point, despite the Daily Mail speculating in 2013 that the now billionaire Jay-Z is a member of the Ordo Templi Orientis, the rapper recently denied being a Satanist in response to online speculation. However, rumors of Diddy's connection to Aleister Crowley persist largely due to his close ties with some of Kabbalah's most famous celebrity initiates. Now, aside from financial scandals in Tel Aviv and Los Angeles, and a criminal case involving its founder's son, the Kabbalah Center has remained relatively innocuous over the past 3 decades, mainly attracting celebrities like Madonna and Ashton Kutcher. individuals who you will find in Diddy's orbit. However, celebrity connections equidistant to the organization in societies similar to the Ordo Templi Orientis suggests that some may not only be seeking power in this reality, but possibly in other realities and even timelines, bringing us back to Ottoman-era Palestine and the first recorded Dybbuk manifestation. At the beginning of this episode, we introduced Issac Luria. His interpretation of Kabbalist lore that, even for the rest of us within the Abrahamic traditions, seems overly fantastical, reinforced the groundwork for the cosmic horror later explored by figures like Crowley in their invocations of supernatural forces. Whether true or not, what matters is that they believed it to be true. And Luria believed that the manifestation of these entities, these anomalies like the Dybbuk, were part of a vast cosmic phenomenon spanning multiple dimensions, a phenomenon known as the Qliphoth.
Figures like Aleister Crowley linked physical intimacy to the Qliphothic realm, another layer of space, a world between worlds. They suggested such ritualized intimacy between two or more individuals at the same time via magic could serve as gateways to these shadowy dimensions. This interpretation deviated significantly from traditional Kabbalah and stood in contrast to the Islamic Ottoman era, which, while allowing Jewish mysticism to flourish within its territories, would have rejected such practices.
The transformation of Kabbalah into a vehicle for ritualized physical intimacy likely gained traction in the late 19th century and early 20th century, when secret societies such as the Ordo Templi Orientis, particularly under the leadership of Aleister Crowley, integrated this kind of intimacy into their magic practices. This was part of a broader trend among Western occultists, who often reinterpreted Middle Eastern traditions through an Orientalist lens, reframing them in ways that diverged from their original contexts. Crowley's fascination with Eastern mysticism was typical of his era, mirroring how writers like H.P. Lovecraft incorporated distorted depictions of the Arab and Islamic world into their fictional mythologies. However, there is a key difference between the two. Lovecraft, for all his xenophobia, was ultimately just a storyteller, weaving fictional tales shaped by his fears and prejudices. Crowley, on the other hand, was not merely an entertainer. He fully believed in and practiced the esoteric doctrines he helped shape, actively influencing real-world occult movements that persist to this day. Egypt played a landmark role in Crowley's development of magic, his utilization of Kabbalah, and spirit summoning. Now, whether or not he actively shared his bed with any locals to achieve these goals is unclear, but if he did it at great risk. Thelema, with its ancient Egyptian elements, is straight-up idolatry, or shirk, within Islam and extremely frowned upon. And while some Egyptians may have slept with Crowley for other reasons, they might have thought twice upon learning he had supposedly drawn the attention of a powerful praetor-human intelligence known as Aiwass. A praetor-human intelligence is, by definition, an Eldritch anomaly, one that, by Lovecraftian standards, operates on an incomprehensible scale, and by Egyptian Islamic standards, an equivalent to one of the elemental Djinn kings. Crowley claimed that after his wife encountered Horus, Aiwass dictated the Book of the Law to him, making it the foundation of Thelema. To us, according to Crowley's logic, this entity could be interpreted as an abstract manifestation, originating from the Qliphoth realm, or at least something embodying its chaotic forces. Egypt has long been a deeply conservative society, and even in Crowley's time, open displays of anything resembling occult rituals would have had serious consequences. However, like many Orientalists, Crowley had little interest in understanding Middle Easterners on their own terms. To him, Egypt was merely an exotic backdrop for his Thelemic system, not a living civilization with its own religious and cultural traditions. And just as Thelema distorted Egyptian spirituality, certain occult interpretations of Kabbalah, particularly in the 19th and 20th centuries, transformed it into something entirely removed from its Jewish origins. So now, in the late 20th and early 21st century, apart from garnering a cult following in Western pop culture, his ideas can be seen influencing real-world occult movements that utilizes his brand of dark magic. And as it should be clear by now, some of these movements seems to have found their way into the darkest corners of the entertainment industry, bringing us to the topic of Qliphothic magic, one of the darkest forms of mysticism that's now virtually mainstream. This form of magic is tied to esoteric and often forbidden practices, including the summoning of entities similar to the Dybbuk, Golems, and other manifestations linked to the Qliphoth. For practitioners, the goal is typically the pursuit of power, wealth, or influence, in contrast to traditional Kabbalah, which emphasizes spiritual refinement and divine ascent. Qliphothic magic often involves the deliberate inversion of sacred symbols, unconventional rituals, and the invocation of entities associated with the Qliphothic realms, theoretically like the Praeterhuman Awas. Some interpretations suggest these practices could interfere with the soul's passage after death, potentially leading to cycles of entrapment akin to reincarnation, a theory with huge implications we will address later. Like the shaitan or malevolent Djinn in Islamic theology, these entities are sometimes described as both gatekeepers of hidden knowledge and unpredictable forces of deception. The Qliphoth itself is sometimes referred to as the Tree of Death.
Most people associate Kabbalah with the Tree of Life, a sacred structure representing divine wisdom, enlightenment, and a path toward unity with God. But few are aware of its hidden counterpart. In Kabbalistic tradition, the Qliphoth represents the corrupt, chaotic, and shadowy forces of existence, a realm of inversion where spiritual wisdom is distorted and used not for enlightenment, but for the pursuit of personal power. Some occultists believe that the true dominance comes not from following the divine order of the Tree of Life, but by embracing and conquering the Qliphoth, breaking the very laws of creation to achieve their own versions of godhood. This is where modern elites enter the picture. This philosophy became central to the teachings of Aleister Crowley, who saw traditional morality and spiritual constraints as obstacles to unlocking true potential. Crowley's personal life was filled with hedonistic rituals, and his gatherings were very much the early 20th century equivalent of Diddy's parties. Crowley wasn't just casually engaging in promiscuity, he ritualized it. His philosophy, "Do what thou wilt," implied that those who understand and manipulate these forbidden forces are not bound by the same rules that govern ordinary people. As previously mentioned, the Kabbalah Center exploded in popularity during the late 90s and early 2000s, but beneath its commercialized teachings, many suspect that certain figures in Hollywood, the music industry, and beyond have adopted the Qliphoth path, knowingly or unknowingly. This participation manifests in a number of ways, most famously in music videos, which are filled with historic references, sacred geometry, and occult symbols that hint at an initiation process. As noted earlier, Jay-Z, for example, has openly referenced Crowley's phrase, "Do what thou wilt," reinforcing the notion that occult philosophy weaves its way into the fabric of the entertainment industry. Whether or not there is legitimate supernatural power behind these displays and practices of the occult is irrelevant. What matters is that those who perform these rituals might believe that they wield true power, and they use their interpretation of Kabbalistic traditions as tools of psychological manipulation, control, and dominance over society. This is where the danger lies, not in the objective nature of reality, but those who think they can reshape it to their will. So even though figures like Diddy may not openly identify as followers of Crowley or Kabbalah, their obsession with ritual, symbolism, and secrecy suggests these same traditions remain influential. This leaves us with a final question. What exactly are they trying to achieve? Some say it's to make way for the Masih ad-Dajjal. Others say it's aliens. But what if all of this, Diddy's parties, Hollywood rituals, and occult Kabbalah, aren't just about power, control, or communing with supernatural forces, but about hacking the very nature of reality itself? Throughout history, secret societies have searched for immortality, alchemy, soul transference, and now controlling the cycle of rebirth itself. What if the true goal is to trap souls, maybe even their own, inside the system? Kabbalah teaches that souls evolve over multiple lifetimes, but if one could corrupt that cycle, they could manipulate who reincarnates, how, and where. And what if the Qliphoth is the key? Instead of following the path of enlightenment, they embrace the tree of death, believing that they can hijack the cycle of existence itself. The answer may rest in the most unexpected time and place. 1980s Lebanon, where a mass anomalous event is currently afflicting approximately 5% of the population. Potentially cosmic in scale, this anomaly hints at a deeper, more unsettling truth, that reality may not be as real as it seems. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss it.